Hi, this is Sally Wood for Be Inspired, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make a bed skirt. Now, my friend purchased 3 lengths of fabric like this as ready-made bed skirts, and she was given like little plastic-headed screws so they'd be screwed into the box springs. And she asked my advice on it, and I said, well, I wash my bed sheets every weekend and sometimes during the week if the dogs put mud on it. And to have the screws up like this in the top and screwed in, I can assure you that I would end up scratching the backs of my fingers on these things, and eventually they would pull out, and then you have a droopy bed skirt, not a fitted bed skirt. So she asked me if I could create something that would keep all of this into place. So that's what I'm going to show you. Now, if you were to do it from scratch, measure from the floor to the top of the bed base, add 2 inches at the bottom for the hem and at least ½ an inch at the top for turning. So that's my advice straight off the bat. But we're going to make this, so let's get on with it. I'm going to start on the cover, and she's given me measurements 79 by 75.25 inches. So 75¼ inches for the box springs. I would cut it 79.5 for here, and then 2 inches for the top, so 81.5. But I'm going to cut it 85 so it hangs down a little bit at the back. That's one way of doing it. Now, I don't know how much she's purchased, so it's going to be hit and miss. So I'll measure it off. 30, 60, 70, 85 is there. So I'm going to put a nick in here and fold the fabric in half. Salvage to salvage there and across, and I'm just going to cut along this folded line. This is actually a good way of using an old bed sheet. You know, sometimes you wear out the base but you have a top sheet left over. Using that up for this would be a good upcycle project. Now, the fabric is 54 wide, so I'm a little bit shy, and anything left on here will do the side piece. Now, I know which side the door is, so I want any joins on the opposite side of the bed, just in case it's noticeable. It shouldn't be, but just in case, you never know. So here I should have a long bit and a short bit. So here's my long bit and here's my short bit. This is the piece I'm going to attach onto here. Now, for the seam that goes up the box springs, I'm just going to put a couple of pins in, because I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way to the top. When I get to the top, I'm going to leave it open slightly so I can cut this and then put a little patch at the top. I'm wondering if she thought I was going to do it a different way, maybe across the bed. I always go up the bed. Just one of those things that I was taught. I'm going to sew up, and I'm going to sew it on a 3.5 all the way up, forward and back, and keeping it as even as possible. I'm actually running it along the 5/8 mark, so ½ an inch to 5/8 would be perfect. All the way up until the fabric on top side runs out. Just finish this length off with a back stitch. Just 2 stitches will be fine, just to hold everything in place. On this side is the long side, and this side is the short side, so I don't make any mistakes. Now, it says here 75.25, and I usually allow ½ an inch seam allowance. 1/4 inch. I'm going to just extend that to ½ an inch, so 75.5. So I need to make sure this is cut at 76.5. Measure across from here, 30. I'm going to put a clip in here, my little clip there, and then I'll move this along. There's my 30. Flatten that out and put another clip here. That makes it 60. I'll double check anyway. I always do. And then from here, there's my cut mark, and I'll turn it the right way around. I am dyslexic and I don't want to make a mistake. And then cut it out for the base with the turnings. And now, turn that up this way, measure to the end, nice and easy. I'm going to cut that all the way up on this short side. Now I've got to the top. The patch I'm going to put in has to be the width of here. So there's my straight side. Pull that out like that, and mark where that comes to, and then fold along the salvages as I usually do to cut that straight, and then I've got the patch to go in. There we go. So this is the piece that's patch, I'm going to pop this in and make it longer. Always start your seams from the outside edge. I'm doing a jean type seam. I'm going to run that along there, and then I'm going to run the raw edge of the top fabric along the side of the foot. And I'm just going to go all the way along. I don't need to do forward and back on this because I'll be overstitching it in a minute. Then all I'm going to do is fold the fabric over along that seam, and then I'm going to fold that underneath like that and sew it into place. It's a little awkward because I've got so much fabric on this side, which is not easy to work with, and then top stitch it in place. I just prefer to have the seam going under on the right hand side. You don't have to, you could do it on the other side. Work your way down, keep this top seam taut. Because I've got a raw edge here, I'm going to actually continue cutting that side of the selvage off, and I'm going to do the same type of seam that I have here all the way up the centre. Usually I don't have to worry, usually it's a nice big selvage that's folded out, but in this case I'm going to have to do it this way. Every project is slightly different, you just have to adjust what you're doing in order to accommodate it. I'll get that done and sewn in. Remeasure to make sure that both sides are the same length. Now, from years of experience, the bottom of the bed skirt, as it goes over the bed frame, has a curve to it. It's usually the size of this style cereal bowl. I'm going to draw that in on the two bottom sides like that. The top of a mug will do, but this is usually the best size to have. There's my second one. And I'm just going to cut this back like I did on the other side. I was always told to pipe it so that the piping holds the bed skirt in place round the box springs. I need to do this because otherwise it will walk when I put the skirt that I've got on. Because of the way the join went at the top of this, I'm actually going to cut it back to the 80 inches. I measured into the centre for the 80 inches, and I'm going to just cut all the way along. I didn't like the way the fabric joined just like here, so I'm going to kind of hide the join so it looks neater, not bitty. Not that anybody is actually going to see this, I understand that. I just get funky about some things. I'll work my way all the way across and reorganise the top. Now I've just pinned this piece of panelling across the top, and then I'll fold it over and it'll give a nice crisp edge to here. Again, I'm doing a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to take it all the way along the top of this. It'll also give a bit of body to the top of here. Press the seam open along here like this, all the way along the top, because when I pop this over like this, it will automatically fold along the sew line and be nice and neat. And then I can just fold this up, pin it, and then make my hem. I'm going to be happy with the way the top looks then. Having folded it over, I am now sewing it into place. I pull the bottom slightly to match the top, because the top seems to be a little bit looser than the bottom for some reason. It shouldn't, because it's the same fabric. And work your way all the way across to the other side, top stitching it. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, work my way all the way down to the centre like that, and I'm going to put a pin in there. I'm going to pick one of these up. I have 3 of these, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put end to end like that, work down to the centre, and put the centre and centre together and pin them. Now, she wanted them to be touching the floor, at least 16.5 inches. I could take the hem off here and make them a bit longer, but it's really a waste of time. Then I am going to ease my way out from the center on both sides and pin it into position like that. And with a bit of luck, this will start to go around the corner there, just a little bit. And now I'll pin the other way. Repeat along the bottom. Usually I do one side across the bottom and up the top because I've got long lengths of fabric that I'm putting in. So here's my center for the bottom, and I'll grab another one of these, center it and pin it into place just like I have on the side, and then I'll work the third one in. Usually I've got the whole skirt that I'm putting in, whether it's box pleats or gathered. Actually, if it's gathered, I gather it into situ. So as I'm working around, I'll be gathering it, but I'll still be marking my halfway marks just like you would for a gathered skirt. So I'll pin that there. So I'll work back towards this way where the other one is, and then I can work out how I'm going to join the corners. Now the one trouble with shop purchased ones, I now have to undo this seam and this seam, sew them together and hope that it covers that little piece. By the time it's sewn in, it really isn't that much, it's about an inch. Okay, so it barely meets even though I've opened both sides, which means I'm going to sew this side together at the top here, and then I'll sew these pieces together and then on up, just like it had originally been done. It's a pain having to do that, but never mind, I'll work it out. Now because this is so shy, I'm actually only going to put a foot width on, run the outside raw edges along the side of the foot, and hopefully it will give me a little bit extra to mess with when I come to put it in. This is why you pin things on bed skirts, because you just don't know what's going to happen. Whilst there is a slight discrepancy at the bottom there, I'm going to see how well this irons out. It should iron out quite well. As I sewed on up, the top is at least 1/4 of an inch out, so that's going to have to come in when I sew it. Now on the corners, I'm going to have to move these pleats slightly, or these gathers slightly, so I'm going to undo a few inches either side, a number of centimeters. It's up to you how much, like this. Now they do have a bit of a gathering at the top, so I'm going to probably have to cut those stitches. They're not easily unraveling. Oh, maybe they will. No, they're not. They're just staying in there and staying put. That's a bit annoying. So I'll cut those out in a minute, because I can't have flat corners. That would look a bit ridiculous. The whole idea is that everything looks even as it goes around. Usually all the gathering is right underneath where the piping is, so you don't actually have to worry about this kind of thing. But due to the way I'm having to do this, I've had to think outside the box, and now I'll have to go the other way too. This has taken a lot longer than I thought. Ideally, these seams should line up, so I'm going to pop that there and pin it. I say ideally, it's only because they're quite obvious. I've opened the side hem up like that for the top of the bed skirt, so I'm going to have to sew this all back into place. I started a little way back and I'm stitching where those original stitches were. And I'm not going to worry about overstitching at the end. Now I have a little bit of white fabric left. Hopefully, if you have this kind of skirt, you don't have this kind of problem. So I'm going to just pop this underneath, a foot width out. So I'm going to run the raw edge of both fabrics along the side of my foot, forward and back. Put that seam up, and then I'm going to go all the way to the bottom. When I get to the bottom, I'm actually going to reverse it and take that out. If I measure from the seam to there, it's 1.5 inches, so that would be 3 inches plus 1/2 inch. I'm going to cut here 4.5 inches down. It's still going to give me a little bit extra room, but not by very much. Okay, actually I am going to make it 1.5 inches that I'm cutting off along there. That would be easier than trying to measure it up. What I'm going to do is move my ruler down and cut up all the way down that length. Fold that over, fold this up so I don't catch it. It's very important, that is. And I'm going to sew from the bottom of the hem all the way across. The front side of that hem on the skirt has to be up. Forward and back, and then straight across. Double check that's in line. And then forward and back. Cut that off, about 1/2 inch. Poke this through to the other side. Should be as square on as possible. Doesn't really matter, nobody's going to see that. And then I'm going to work from the bottom. Fold that back underneath and that part of the hem there. So basically I'm folding this raw edge underneath and then this raw edge down on top, like that. Pop that under there with my, it's actually less than 1/2 inch seam allowance. But I'm going to run that along the stitches that I've just put in. Forward and back. Ooh, maybe not forward and back. And then all I need to do is hold this quite tight here so that seam is sharp. and then fold this fabric over the top and stitch it into place. All the way up, because I'm trying to add fabric to it so that it's not so tight on the end. For the bed components to have been, or the bed skirt components to have been a bit shy, so hopefully you won't have this problem, but if you do, you know now how to fix it. Put the hem across the bottom, and I'm folding everything in just like I did before, only this time I've got to come up this side, and then as I go, fold that in the width of the seam until I get to the top. Now, having had to put a piece of fabric on so that I could extend this as much as possible, I am now going to pop the top of this against the top of the bed cover. This goes on top of the box springs and this hangs down. Usually I would have piping along the center there, but because we don't have enough fabric, I'm not putting it in. And then I'm just going to pin this. Now, it probably will mean that this will move along a little bit, so as I get there I will move it. Now, before I put the corners in, I'm going to run the straight edges of the side and the base of the bed skirt together, and I'm going to clip the center mark. That is where the join has to be, and I'll do that on the other side too. Then I can pin this in to place and see where everything lines up. Now, that doesn't line up to the center, and that actually comes over slightly, so opening those seams up in this case was quite a good idea. I'm not really sure how I'm going to do this. I'll work it out when I get there, because that's a little bit gappy. There's the clip for the second side, and if I bring this one in again, it seems to have moved, so it looks like they're not going to be even. Usually you have a band across the top and a band across the bottom, and then all of this is made up and you put it on. The other thing to remember is if you have a bed skirt that needs to go over a bed frame, you need to leave this open so that it will work. If you're falling short, I would open the seam up like I did at the top and do something like this so that it lays over one another. But just make sure that they cross over enough that they're hidden. Alright, just overlap them enough. So I'm popping this under here with my 1/2 inch seam allowance like I did earlier. As I go down here like this, it'll pull into place. And then I'll move the fabric down as I work my way down the length of this. Keep the box spring fabric up because you're going round corners. Move the pin and let everything move itself into place as you go down. This has been a long effort. As I say, sometimes doing a remake or an adjustment to something is longer in time than if you make it from scratch. Make sure the fabric underneath is flat and sew all the way around the 3 sides. Sew this into position. Again, keeping the 1/2 inch, but bringing this into place until I get all the way around. Now, hopefully, with a bit of luck, I'll be able to take any extra fabric from here and roll it to the other side of the skirt. So I'm going to pop the seam back. I think that took it to exactly where it needed to be. Let's see what happens at the other end. It looks even at the moment, but it might walk as it goes. So that's the thing with fabric, they do 2 different things. This is across the bottom of the bed skirt. Now, I've just measured it. I actually have to find 1 1/4 inch of blue fabric. I'm just going to lay the skirt down onto the fabric, not pulling either, and sewing it into place. Again with the 1/2 inch seam allowance. When I get to the area that I had sewn, I will just undo the stitching and work my way around and say realign and sew into place. With a little bit of luck, I'll find the extra fabric at the bottom and be able to work it in, and then I won't have that gap at the top. Usually I like to have this uppermost, which means I am going to come down and very carefully ease this in. And it's awkward to do a straight side on a round edge, so just do it slowly and carefully. The tops have to be even and on round. Here's my center mark, and this is where that should be, but as you can see it's further over. I might have to undo this, so I've got it on a long stitch, and then I'm going to go all the way along and hopefully the other side will fit in as it should. So although I've pinned it, those pins might need to be moved. I'm not stretching either fabric. Pull that out so it straightens up. So having come round that corner, I'm just going to lay the fabric flat like that and pop that on top of it. And so to the other corner. As I get to each pin, I'm going to have to release it and see how it comes into the centre. It might even out. Just coming into the centre, and that has taken in quite a bit of the fabric, so I think I'm on the right track this time. And into place. At least this way I've shown you, and put a video out. Starting to move along nicely. Okay. What I will do is just double check where the marks are. There's the mark for the center of there, and here is where the seam joins up. So I'm just going to measure those out and make sure those go even like that. And when I do that, this actually comes in correct. I'll carry on with this and get that in. This is the bottom rounded edge here, and I need to iron out all of this mess. So I've got it on almost cotton, and I'm going to soak it and iron it all out. Hopefully most of the stitch marks will come out, including those pressed in marks. I know that this can be soaked, it's 100% cotton. Check with yours. If you're unsure, check at the top on the far side of your bed so that nobody's going to see the mess, and check there first. With this one I'm okay. That doesn't look too bad. A little bit more down there. It's going to be hidden anyway, because I'm going to make sure that that's in one of the folds, but I always make sure that it's gone as well as I can. And she'll probably take it to the dry cleaner. Press right up there in those gathers. I don't want those lines showing at all. When I fold this side in, I'll make sure that there's a pleat over it, and when it hangs it should be hidden like that. So it'll look as if it's one piece of fabric going all the way around. This pleat kind of twists up, so I'm going to straighten that one out first. Just see if you can hook a stitch that's close to it, and then it'll come out. Managed to get that little pleat out, and I'm going to make it go up and down instead of across. I also need to make sure that this border is flat, and because I'm doing it this way up, it does have a tendency to flip up and out of place, so just be careful if you've got something like this. I'll put another little pleat here going the other way, just a little one. Try to line up to where you think the top is going to be, because that's something else. I've had to cut that back. I'll put another one under there, pull out the border, pop that under there like that, and in. Now I'm starting to go around the corner, so that has to be pulled out flat like that. I'm going to make a bigger pleat hiding the fold behind it. Make sure that goes up and down, because I need to see if I can get a small pleat in here somewhere. Line that up. That might just automatically make a fold in a minute. See there, it's going to do its own thing. Go over a few stitches just to secure everything. And done. I could make it more even, but that would involve undoing quite a bit of the gathers both sides of the join. But here, as I hold it up, there's a pleat that hides it at the top. It should just fold in. It shouldn't be so noticeable. Usually you have the gathers going around and you make sure all of the joins are 1/4 to 1/2 inch hidden, and it would be quite full, so it wouldn't pop out like that, but hopefully that will hold. And then I am going to secure this with the overlocking stitch, just to hold all of that in place at the top. And then I'll do that on the other side too. Thank you for joining me on this project. I didn't iron it properly because I'm sure she's going to go and get it ironed at the dry cleaners. I'm actually quite pleased with the way this turned out. My advice is I like my bed skirts to come right up to the top of the bed, which is why I did it the way I did it. So from the top of the bed down to the base, and then work the base in. And give yourself as much fabric as you can. By doing this, I might have only given myself 3/4 of an inch on either end of each piece. So you want as much fabric as you can. Saying that, it's up to you if you want to, because there's various different kinds of bed skirt. This is quite a tall bed, which is why I actually kept this band in. Otherwise, I would have removed it. Just putting this gathered work in would have been a lot easier. But unfortunately, in order to get the height, I needed to leave that in, and that determined how I put it together. But apart from that, I think it looks quite nice. I'm sure she's going to be thrilled with it when she comes and picks it up. If you want to hear more from me, please subscribe, hit the bell button, and a few thumbs up would be absolutely excellent. And in the meantime, take care. See you later. Ciao.